Hello and welcome to the LIP, the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and I'm very lucky to be joined by a good friend and really interesting woman, FJ Smith. FJ I've known for a very long time, which means I'll probably gloss over half of the stuff that she's done, but she's been a recruiter, she's been an in-house talent manager, she's been an executive coach, and now she's kind of out in Dubai working as an empowerment coach, which is a phrase I didn't know till about 10 minutes ago. So we're really going to get into executive coaching today. We're going to talk about why it's useful, what we can do with it. But before we do that, let's welcome FJ. And if you want to sort of introduce yourself and how you phrase what you do, be really interesting.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for such a warm welcome. Crikey, I don't think I've ever had such an accolade before. So obviously FJ, I started out initially as an agency recruiter, cutting my teeth on agency recruitment, which, as you know, Alex, is a very tough game.
It is a tough game, yeah.
I don't think you actually know this about me, but I started out in industrial recruitment and construction.
Glamorous,
but it taught me a huge amount, and it taught me a lot about people and just how people can either be the most reliable or unreliable commodity that you've got. I then moved in-house I moved to London. So I moved from, obviously I'm Scottish, so I moved from Glasgow down to London, and on my own, which was probably the boldest move I think I've ever made, or one of the boldest moves. And I started out in-house at UBS, so worked at UBS for quite some time, and then stayed within the financial market, and then ended up at the lovely Lloyd's of London, which I'm really, really proud to have worked at and been part of the culture there. So ran the recruitment team there along with my colleagues, and while I was there, I was really lucky that my boss, Susie Black, got me an exec coach, and because she'd basically been brought in to change the HR function at Lloyd's. So I think we were the most hated department. They hated us. What do you mean you want to change things, So, and being, trying to change a 300-year-old organisation was massive.
Yeah.
So she's had an exec coach through all of her career. And I was really lucky that she, one, trusted me enough, but believed in me enough to spend the money on, getting me an exec coach. And I had no idea what it was, and I fell in love with it. It gave me the space to be able to have a non-judgmental conversation and a strategic conversation about what I needed to do in my role to be successful, what needed to be done to help this change agenda, but also how I was going to do it, how I was going to interact with people, how I was going to manage those politics of it all. But being able to take that step back and really, really think about it, but not just think about it, say it out loud. Because once you say it out loud, it's very different from what you think inside your head. You either think, wow, that's a great idea, or that's absolutely rubbish. So it gave me that space to do that.
How did you find that? Because one of the things I know that I've sort of been quite conscious of is that an exec coach is quite a personal relationship. It's a one-on-one relationship. Did you get lucky first time? Was it the first coach you saw was good, or did you have go through a couple? Or
I actually met with 3, and I've actually kept that philosophy myself now. I always say to people, go and meet another couple of coaches, because you're right, it's such a personal relationship. And I chose Charlotte, and I chose Charlotte because she had come from banking, but she actually came from a drama and communications background as well.
Okay.
So she was really interesting. She was quite quirky, and I just felt like I could trust her.
Yeah.
And that for me is the biggest thing. that's how I've built my business as well, is on trust.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hugely confidential conversation that you have. And also, I think a lot of people in corporate organisations, if their boss wants to get them a coach, they think it's remedial, which it so isn't. Believe you me, the cost of it, they wouldn't be putting that money into you if they thought you were rubbish, because they think you're really good. And two, they think the coach is going to tell my boss everything.
Yeah.
But you have to design that alliance at the very beginning with your clients and your coach, that what you discuss is completely between those four walls. So it's really that opportunity to say how you really feel. And there might be some days that you really hate your boss and you don't agree with anything they've done. Mm-hmm. But by the time you come out of the coaching session, you've seen things from a different perspective and you'll have a different viewpoint on it. Or maybe not.
Does that stigma still sort of sit there, that people still, because I think it sort of flips between, depending on who I talk to, exec coaches is seen as, it's either a remedial thing to address underperformance, or it's a cachet thing to sort of say it's a badge of honor. I've been selected for exec coaches. But I see more of that now. I think people seem to be a bit more embracing of it, but that people still sometimes view it sort of negatively, or?
Yeah, I had some clients last year actually, and it took me a good couple of sessions before they start, really trying to build their trust and also break down those barriers as well. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really quite challenging for coaches to go in, especially if someone doesn't believe that they need it, that they're perfect, they're really good at what they do. No one is. We're human beings. We're not robots. And the way that I describe it is an athlete who is going for the Olympics or whatever competition they're going for. They have a coach at the side of the track every single day. That coach will push them to the absolute pinnacle of their performance. Mm-hmm. And that's what a coach will do for you in business or, personally. So that's the way I think I would like people to think about it, is that, having someone who will, one, call you out on your bullshit, and two, champion you as well. You know how you think you can get away with it and be like, no one's noticed that, but your coach will be like, really? Yeah. I've seen that before. So, yeah.
Do you think it's because people, I think people tally them up, executive coaching, with like counselling or life coaching, which has negative connotations because the suggestions are that you're in a bad place mentally, that you can't push through. That's what I see. People sort of confuse those sort of three professions into one and say, it's all just for people who need help, basically.
Listen, I think there's a fine line between coaching and therapy. Mm-hmm. Depends on what type of therapy, of course.
Of course, yeah.
But if you're a trained coach, and by that I mean more than a weekend course, be quite clear on that. You have to be able to identify what is a coaching need and what is a therapy need. Mm-hmm. And I've had that with a number of clients, where I've had to call it out and say, look, I think that's more for a discussion with your therapist. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have one, have you considered one? Yeah. And I for one, actually did have to go for therapy once. I fell, as you know, I fell a long time ago, and I'd relapsed, and it was just a really difficult time. And I didn't realise that I needed a therapist, and I was really, oh my God, how can I, I'm a coach, I'm an exec coach, I should have everything, my shit together, right?
Yeah.
And I went for it. It was the best thing I've ever done. Best thing I've ever done. Mm-hmm. And I would thoroughly recommend that, if people are putting it off, go and do it, even if it's a couple of sessions. And it actually taught me the real difference between therapy and coaching as well. Mm-hmm. It really did. So the two for me are different. A therapist will either, let's say it was CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy. Yeah. They'll get you to work through a series of of actions. You'll talk about things. How do you feel? What does that make you think, etc. Whereas the coaching conversation is very different. It's about, what's the vision? What are the blockers that are stopping you getting there? Mm-hmm. Who's in your way? Okay, mm-hmm. If you had to, literally move around the table and you've just heard your colleagues say that, what would you say? Oh, I'd actually say go and have that conversation with that person. All right, what's stopping you from doing it? Yeah, I never thought about it like that before. Yeah. So you ask questions to open up the doors in someone's head to get them to look at the problem differently, whereas the therapist will be more about thoughts, feelings, how do you feel? Yeah. Life coach for me it is about someone's life, and exec coaching is purely about the business part of it. Mm-hmm. However, your life does come into it because your personal life does have an impact on your business life as well. So there are small elements of people's personal lives that that will come up. Yeah. But a life therapist is basically, a life coach is basically all about someone's personal life. Mm-hmm. Which obviously I don't do. I do exec and empowerment. Yeah, yeah. So we've dived in really deeply to all the exec coach thing straight away, and I still haven't finished finding out. So how long were you with your exec coach when you were having exec coaching for yourself at Lloyd's? How long did that go on for? Just over a year. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I had 6 months, first of all. Then we had a catch-up session with Susie, my boss, mm-hmm. To look at what did she still want me to work on, what did I feel that I needed to work on, and what did the coach feel that I still should work on as well. And then we redesigned the next 6 months, but it was a really good check-in point to actually review what I'd done, what I'd achieved, not only within work but also within my own thoughts, and how I was tackling the problems that I was facing with trying to implement a new recruitment practice within Lloyd's, instead of just having a conversation in the pub and he's really good, let's get him in. Which, don't get me wrong, I still absolutely love. I still think it's great, but I do think you need to follow up with something a little bit more robust than that's true. It used to be quite good for business for people like me, though. And everyone else. I think it's... Yeah, no, I know. Well, that didn't help. So after you'd spent a year, obviously it seems to be clearly good experience, made an impression on you. How long after that did you decide that you were going to train? And actually, it'd be interesting to hear about the training, because you mentioned it there. There are, like, be an exec coach, 48-hour course. It wasn't 48 hours, no? No, it was 2.5 years. And a lot of money. Yeah. How long was it? Well, look, first of all, I just was blown away by it. I really was. I really seen it in action and could feel the difference that it was making to how I was thinking about how I was tackling issues, how I was tackling problems whenever I was in a boardroom and I had a head say to me, expletive, expletive, expletive. He didn't care what we were trying to do, which was just bizarre to me, that someone felt the need that he needed to go that far to get his point across. So probably towards the end of my coaching, I would say probably the last 2 months, I thought, you know what, I want to start exploring this as an option for me. So I did some research, spoke to lots of learning development and professionals around the London market. Yeah. Who did they use? What coach? Why? Was there a common theme in terms of where they trained? Mm-hmm. And yes, there was. And it turned out that it was the same course that my coach had done with the Coaching Training Institute. So that's who I decided to go with. Uh-huh. Also, it fitted in with work because it was Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays. I had homework to do during the week as well. And I was really lucky that Lloyd's allowed me to practice whilst I was there. Yeah. They actually, because you have to get right into coaching straight away, because that's the only way you can learn. So they allowed me to do that within the corporation itself. So I was really lucky.
Oh wow! How many? Because do you have to rack up a certain amount of hours in experience? Is that part of it?
Yeah. So the first one you rack up 100 hours, and then you have to rack up another 150 whenever you're doing certification. And then you have to constantly update that throughout your coaching, let's call it a coaching license, okay, just for ease. And you also have to record some sessions and send that off to a supervisor. They don't care about who it is. For them, it's just a voice. So for confidentiality wise, what they're actually doing is assessing you as the coach, and really keeping you in check and making sure that you're doing the best of what you can and can do within the realms of the coaching philosophy. And also checking that you're not saying things that you shouldn't do. And so we're really highly governed. And you also, as a coach, you have to have your own coach. Right. I say have to because I think you do. I think practice what you preach. But also it's a way that we can discuss things because I can't come home at night. Whenever I come home at night, my husband says to me, "How was your day?" All my work's confidential. I can't speak about it. So all I can say is, I had a good day, or it was tough, or so the only person that I can really talk to about is my coach, because it's within the bounds of the confidentiality.
So that's quite interesting as well. So how should someone go around getting a coach, and when's the when do you think is the sort of optimum times? Is there a time should you do it before you change job, when you change job, whenever you like? What's the?
Oh, I think just do it now. So, can I say, Alex, what I was going to say earlier on? GFDI.
Of course you can. Yeah.
It's my favourite saying. Just do it.
Yeah.
So, because there is no right or wrong time. In terms of when you should get a coach, I think the sooner the better. I think the younger the better. Right. I think a lot of people make the assumption that you only have an exec coach if you're a CEO or an MD or a director. If you're just a recent graduate, you like it's too much, you can't do it. Actually, do it. Because there's 5 key things that I always say whenever the 5 gremlins in your head. So will your idea work? Or will your, whatever it is, whether it's communication, a project, piece of work, or you're approaching your boss about something, whatever it is, will it work? Will I make money? What will everyone think? Will I still have a job? And will I still be loved? 5 key things, no matter who you are, what age you are, and what job you do. So if you can start off younger, you will more than likely stop second guessing yourself, maybe quite as much. You're more empowered to make decisions. You would maybe approach things differently from what you would do without that hindsight. And you can't get hindsight until you're older, right? And you have it. Whereas in that coaching conversation, it can make that come about in terms of we get you to think 10 years down the line what the impact would be, or 5 years down the line, whatever it may be. So I think the younger, the better. Or if you are thinking, I really hate my job, this isn't for me anymore. Is it just that you're just having a bad time, or do you really want to change? And I think at that point, get a coach, because you speak to a friend, you speak to a family member, and they'll, everyone has their own opinion, their own agenda, as in a place of good for you. But actually, sometimes a place of good for you can someone actually be saying to you, calling you out.
Yeah. I think it's a couple of things I want to pick up on. I think having coaching later. I mean, my experience is, I was a graduate. I went to work in the insurance industry, and I only lasted like 9 months, because within that 9 months, I'd like the client facing stuff, and so I was doing like glamorous commercial motor fleet claims. But the bit I liked is we owned certain clients, so we deal with certain, particular clients, and I liked building that relationship. So there was a role of this relationship manager role, and I remember to this day saying to my boss that I fancied doing it, and I knew what the salary was, and they went, "Oh, we can see you doing that in 10 years' time." But there was nothing else there, so it wasn't like, "Oh, but you need to do this step, this step, this step to get there." Yeah. And firstly, that timescale when you're talking to someone in the early 20s is a graduate. And I looked at the salary and I was like, not going to be enough for me in 10 years' time, and just like exit the building. Whereas I now look at the industry and knowing what I know about the industry, there's loads of really interesting avenues. There's so many different roles. I might not have left. I might still have done. I happen to like my job. I'm lucky, but the point being that no one sat down and broke it down for me. No one asked me why I felt that I would like that job. So I think it'd be really useful, because the amount of graduate bounce we have in the industry, insurance is coming in and then people exit.
And also, I mean, for God's sake, how can you expect a graduate to really know that that's what they want to do for the rest of their lives?
Exactly. Exactly.
What? I ended up then retraining as an exec coach in my early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'd have known what I do now, then I wish that I would have got a coach at the very beginning, just to even help me decide way before that, whenever I was picking university courses. I would definitely have loved to have spoken to someone, because my career's teacher told me I was really good with people. Well, she got that bit right. She got everything else bloody wrong. She told me I might work in Asda. I'd love to meet her now.
Oh God, it'd be so funny. It'd be so funny. I look back on that and that period, it's like I felt that because I wanted to work in the financial services industry, I went into the business degree, which I found absolutely miserable. It was so dull, and I didn't realise that I could have got any degree. Originally I was going to do like psychology or English literature, and and I could have done them, but you just didn't know that. I think about, just thinking about insurance, I didn't know what an actuary was. Absolutely no idea. I was good at maths. That might have been a path to go down. But if you don't know these things, and I think making it about insurance, I think insurance could do more, and it is doing more, with telling people much younger about the opportunities within the market. But I think almost all industries could do with that.
I agree with you on the insurance piece. I really do. And I know that, I've not been in London now for 4 years. I've relocated to Dubai, which is a whole other story. And that's been a scary ride. But I spoke with a client yesterday. She's been made redundant in all of this COVID thing, right? She's been out here for 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
And she's done a lot of change management projects, and just the way that her personality is. And I said, what industries are you thinking of? And she listed a couple. And I said, have you ever thought about insurance? I swear to God, honestly, her face was like, insurance? No. And I was like, it's awesome. It's probably one of the best industries I worked in. The nicest people coming from banking. I wouldn't go back to banking. No way. I'd pick insurance all day long. And also the amount of money, that is generated within the insurance industry as a whole, but also some really interesting things that, that they're doing, and the way that they, pave the way for other countries to be able to trade, etc. And the advice. And I remember the first time I was asked to interview a catastrophe modeller.
Yeah.
Thinking, what the hell is a catastrophe modeller? I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
I just used to sit in every interview, not because I needed to, but because I felt as though I was learning something, and I loved the geekiness of it, right? And truly fascinating, and thinking, wow, there's people out here that do this. So before I used to go book any holiday, I used to go and speak to them and say, is there any tornadoes, hurricanes?
I did the same. I've spoken to a few people who've had this, but I don't know. As I got older, I used to love flying. As I got older, I had one really bad flight back from Thailand, and I started to get a bit uncomfortable flying.
Yeah.
So before I flew, I spoke to I placed this guy as a aviation counsel at an insurance company. So I spoke to him about, who's good to fly with and who isn't. And he was basically, he said, he gave me these certain regions and said, never get on a plane in these countries. And he went, and personally, I would never get in a helicopter. But he went, other than that, it's all fine. I've never been in a helicopter since.
You also you'd get me in one as well.
No, terrifying. But no, and that's the thing. I think it's a misconception. And I think some of the stuff that's been good about how my job's evolved and my client list has evolved, doing much more with insurtechs. They're technology companies that happen to work in insurance, much different kind of profile of individual. And it's funny sitting on the cusp of the two, because that's probably a coaching session in itself, because you've got these meeting of cultures, and often they both carry these huge misconceptions about the other. Tech companies can turn up and think they're reinventing the wheel. They're bringing this really high-end tech native data-driven mindset, and they're going into insurance companies and kind of, I think this has changed over the time, but there was certainly a sort of almost adversarial approach going, oh, you people know nothing, we're going to go and teach you everything. And then the other side of the fence, the kind of more established insurance players, sometimes being a bit like, what do you know? And there was this kind of, but now, I mean, obviously when it works well. But that says a lot about people, right? I presume that coaching's not going to work for people that if you're not going to be open-minded to the process, you're going to get nothing out of it.
Do you know what? You're absolutely right. If you put nothing in, you're going to get nothing out.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember whenever I left Lloyd's to set up on my own, and I had to get rid of a certain client, and no names, and it was the best thing I did. And I really needed the cash flow. I did. I'd invested a huge amount into my training, and setting up. And also my then boyfriend just thought it'd be a great time to then propose. And we had, not consistent money coming in and planning a wedding. Really great. And I can remember coming out of his office and stepping out onto Fenchurch Street, and I just looked up at the buildings and I just breathed, and I thought, it was the best decision I've ever made, was to actually cut loose. And he by cutting him loose, it allowed me to then open up the doors to work with other people, because I was too busy questioning myself, about things. And I spoke to my coach about it. And out of that, I was so worried about missing out on, that invoice, as well. I then actually got another 4 clients from it. Ta-da!
Really?
So because I took that step to say, no, I'm not doing this. This doesn't feel right. And also you're not showing up. It then opened my mind up a lot more. And I started, to look for other clients in other ways. And it gave me the freedom to do that. So I think, being bold in your moves as well. Yes, you've got it to be calculated, but also trust your gut.
Yeah.
Trust your instinct. And if you think, what, I do actually need to speak to someone that I don't know, then get a coach for a couple of sessions, and if a coach tries to, most coaches will probably balk at this, but if they try to wrap you up into, you must sign up with us for 6 months, no, I'm okay if someone wants to have 1 or 2 sessions. 1 session isn't probably going to be enough, and probably 2, but if that's what the client needs, and then they come back to you again in 6 months' time, then, just let it be. So how confidence.
You're talking about sessions. How often do people tend to have sessions? Is that completely bespoke as well?
It's bespoke, but they generally have them they usually sign up 3 months because it's a big commitment, right?
Yeah, of course.
So it's like, and if they've never had it before, is this going to work? Am I going to like it? So they generally sign up for 3 months, and then 3 months turns into 6 months, and then that will often then turn into 9 months.
Yeah.
And then they'll go away, and then I've actually got a client that's just recently come back to me, an old client, and she's actually a Lloyd's person, and I gave her some career coaching whenever I was there, and she relocated overseas, and she's come back to me, and I didn't actually realise the impact of the coaching that I did at the time, and she's come back and she said, I'd really like to pick up with you because you really helped clear my mind on a lot of things, and if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have made the decisions that I did, and it was the best move that I ever made. And I'd really like to pick back up again with you. And I was like, oh wow, and I'd only just qualified then, so I took that as a great accolade. But also the fact that happens with a lot of clients, they will come back to you either a year or 2 years later, and also sometimes you might not be the right coach for the next time.
Right.
So I think you actually also have to, as a coach, you have to identify what it is that they really want this time. And I've referred a few clients actually onto other coaches that I know to say, look, I think this might be a better fit, because there's nothing worse than someone having a bad experience, because one, it will, affect you as a coach and the name of coaching as well. So I think, you have to do the right thing and refer them on if they're not the right client for you.
Because we sort of touched on a similar thing just before. I was telling you that, so I ran a poll on LinkedIn and essentially said, do people believe that psychometric assessments add value to the recruitment process? And I thought it would be close, but I thought it would be yes. But it was quite overwhelmingly no. It was like 70% of people, there's a couple of hundred people voted. So it's pretty consistent. Do you use assessment tools at all? Have you experience of them? What's your view on them? What's your view on that poll?
The poll is because you're not using it correctly. Yeah. That's why it's a no.
Yes, that's my thing. Most of the time, it's a misapplication, because I think what became clear in the poll was it was about faith. It was like people didn't trust them. It wasn't that people thought. I think people can see that there must be something that can be done there, but I just think people don't have faith in them. And it comes down to, I think people apply them wrongly, use the wrong tool, etc. But yeah.
Okay, so a couple of opinions on this.
Yeah.
I think the people that don't trust them is because those are the people that have tried to fudge the results themselves whenever they've tried to do it.
True.
And they think that they've been clever enough to get that. They may well have been, right? But all they've done is actually screw themselves over for not getting it right and maybe missing out on an opportunity within a firm to be identified for another role or a training opportunity or something like that. Second of all, there's a number of companies that I've gone in to do some consultancy with, and I've asked them about their psychometric testing. And part of your license, I hold my license for it, you have to have a follow-up session with the candidate, right? And let's face it, if a candidate has taken the time to not only apply to your company, your role, they've prepared for it, etc., they've got through round 2 of interview, now they've got to do the psychometric testing, then give them the good grace to give them that time back as well, right? And you should, with the psychometrics, actually sit down with the candidate, Zoom or however, and actually ask them how they felt about it, because you need to ascertain what environment they were in, because you actually have a score at the bottom to tell them if they're faking good or faking bad. What is that score, right?
Yeah.
But what the report tells you, if anybody looks at it, they'll just take it in its literal form. No, there's lots of correlations between things, and unless you're trained in it, you won't really know that. Now, I'm also behavioural profile trained, that maybe I look a little bit deeper to things, and I'll make those connections, and then I'll ask them around that to test out the validity of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of companies now are just simply relying on the reports that the psychometric companies will spit out. And I think unless you're actually really trained in it, you can interpret it lots of different ways. And unless you spend that time with the candidate to really dig deep on things, then you're not getting the best of it. From there, you should then, as a recruiter, advise the hiring manager what they should ask in final stage interview to test things out even more and be thorough.
Yeah.
It's scientifically proven that if you use psychometric testing, you'll be 45% effective in your recruitment. If you just use CVs, you're 25% effective.
Yeah.
I think I'd rather go with the 45. Then if you use behavioural profiling like me, you're 75% effective. So it's like,
that was what I thought about it. I mean, because I had an interesting dialogue with someone saying, well, people answer what they think the right answer is, right? The right profile is. But my point was that that's no different from an interview process.
Correct.
In an interview process, you're presenting your best self. You're presenting what you think is going to get you the job. So as long as we know the game everyone is playing, every candidate is essentially realistically probably doing the same thing, then you're still going to see traits. You're still going to see kind of suggestions of behaviours. And as you rightly say, you should follow up. I did some training on some psychometric testing so I can administer them and evaluate them because I found it interesting. And the biggest takeaway I had from that was that I did a test and it said that I had less than average leadership potential when I'd just been promoted to what's that?
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. But I knew what it meant. I mean, what it meant was I'm a horrible admin, the operational element of leadership is appalling at it. I'm not good at it.
You're a recruiter. We're all rubbish at admin, recruiters.
I know. I find it incredibly stressful. But leadership and management are not the same thing. So I was like, well, that's different. And then the second thing that came out was that I found it stressful to present in public was one of the suggestions. And like my two hobbies are stand-up comedy and acting. And so it was just wrong. But it doesn't default the whole thing, because actually what it said is that, so how do I get over those things? Well, it's about preparation. The reason that I'm happy to get up on stage and I've written the jokes, I've learnt the jokes. I'm getting up. I don't want to reveal anything, but comedians don't just get up there and try and be funny. It's the most rehearsed thing in the world, and it's the same with obviously acting. You've got a script, you learn it, you go out there, you prepare, you perform. But if you'd just taken it on face value, I would have got no job that required me to present anything. When I'd probably put it down as one of my strong points. So that follow up is the most important part of it, as far as
and I get it. Look, I understand that, and whenever coming from in-house HR and recruitment, the time that you just don't have. Yeah, I get it. I really do. But I actually remember the claims department. I did a piece of recruitment, and I actually used them as a project to really showcase. And I remember one of the ladies saying to me, "Oh my God, you got them spot on. How did you know? Everything you said they would do, they're now doing that. They act like that." And I was like, I don't have a crystal ball. We used the testing in the right way. Yeah. And I didn't come out and do a surprise with them. We did a really structured interview. We did the testing, and that's because that's who they are. Past behaviour predicts future behaviour. Yeah. So but I was really happy that it proved to me yet again that it did work. Because you do question yourself, right? You do go, of course. Does that work?
Yeah. Well, it's because I trained to do administer and look at MBTI, and MBTI's got a bit of a kick in over the last sort of couple of decades, and elements of that I completely agree with. And, would I say it's the most robust tool? Probably not. But it doesn't default all tools. And it also doesn't default like even that. I think because most of the time, as I mentioned to you, I've sat in a recruitment process and been asked to fill out an MBTI questionnaire, which has no place in recruitment whatsoever. But
which you're not allowed to use in a recruitment process.
I know, and I knew that, and I was like, well, I'll happily do it, but I also didn't have a follow-up interview as part of that process, which is an inbuilt part of the process. So yeah, I think most of the time it's about misapplication of tool. And that brings me, I'm conscious of your time, so I will sort of start to wind things in. But because you've worked on site at UBS, Lloyd's, PwC, is it Alphatane? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, out here in Dubai, family-owned group.
Some massive groups, and a lot of the time, if I'm right, you're quite often going in and saying our recruitment process isn't where it should be. Because we're talking about this podcast about building teams, and particularly, we've got some insurtechs that are sort of maybe they've got a round of investment, they've got to build a team quickly, they won't necessarily have this big recruitment function. What makes a good recruitment function, and where do people commonly go wrong with that, in your view?
What makes a good recruitment function is clarity.
Okay.
People being really clear on what they want. And also cut down with the jargon 4-page job descriptions. Just explain what you do as a company, and where that role fits into it. Your job description is a sales tool. Yeah. If you read a job description that was 4 pages long, you'd be like, and I want people to remember that about their CVs as well, by the way, FYI, as we're on page length. Whenever I would go into organisations and really sit down with them and say, look, what is it you want? And ultimately, people never have the time. Well, guess what? If you don't have the time and literally put that half an hour aside to really discuss what you want, then it's going to fall apart. You really need to be clear on that. And I think having good questions, what is it, really thinking about the questions, what is it you want to get out of the interview, and really think about that, and put those, really get them to describe previous examples so that it will showcase, can they do it, and how do they think, how do they communicate, other than, well, what I would do. No. So, be really, really clear on that. And also, for the first interviewer to actually speak to the second interviewer, because that often doesn't happen. And, they'll have had too much, we thought he was great, or we thought she was great, and that's it. Yeah. But actually, okay, what did they answer in this piece? What is it that you weren't happy with? Okay, let me follow up on that. So that at second stage interview, they can say, so the last time that you met with us, you spoke to Alex about X, Y, and Z. Can you just go into that a little bit more deeply for me? Yeah. And it shows to the candidate that you have really spoken, you've conversed as an organisation. These candidates, I think a lot of companies do forget about the candidate journey. So what cracks me up is, let's all waste 15 minutes of the interview talking about someone's CV, and you do that 4 times over.
Exactly why. One of the points I made about psychometrics, I went, if nothing else, they give you a basis for an interview to discuss something which every candidate has experienced. So as long as everyone has the same experience, I always feel that's a fair experience. Some people like interviews, some people don't. Some people like psychometric assessment, some people don't. But as long as everyone has the same, that's fair. But the amount of times that I've sent, could be quite senior people into some 4-stage interview process, and basically they have 4 separate conversations about their CV and their experiences, and quite often they're almost uniform, and as the candidate experience is poor. The client and the sort of hiring company hasn't actually gleaned any more information. All you've got is probably 4 groups of people that at the end go, oh, we probably like that person more. And it's not about suitability. It's just we just like that person, and that's not unimportant, but it's not what you would say. Robust is what we're always looking for.
And you know what? I mentioned to you before. I'm recruiting just now for someone for my company.
Yeah.
And I've had so many good CVs, and I've really had to stop myself from saying, "Oh, I really like them," because it's a halo and horn effect, right?
Yeah.
And I think, I'd have, it'd be great, working with him or working with her.
Yeah.
And I've had to be really, what is actually this person going to do for me?
Mm-hmm.
How are they going to help me? And also, they're better at other things than me. If someone's better than you, hire them. It's a no-brainer, because they're going to make you look good, right? And so therefore, and make your life easier. So I think, being clear and actually being transparent throughout the whole process is my advice. And you asked at the beginning, so you asked what would make it good, and what was the other one? What was the other question you asked?
Oh, that's just bad, isn't it?
When it doesn't, why it doesn't.
Oh yeah. So what is the most common thing that people get wrong in their recruitment function? What are you most? Because quite often I speak to you and you've been hired on contract to go and fix some disastrous recruitment function. What's your sort of? I suppose what's your tick list? You go in. What are the first couple of things you look at, and what's the most common thing that's wrong with it?
They never have interview packs.
Right.
Never. And sometimes the bigger the organisation, the worse it is. So everyone thinks like, oh, nice and shiny on the outside. Inside,
there's a slight arrogance, I think. And I think this plays to ego. And we touched on this. We were talking about, is it better to have a really profitable 25-man business as opposed to have a 200-man business? Yeah. And of course, the answer is whichever's most profitable. But a lot of people go for these big, they want to build a big business. There's something about interviewing which I find extraordinary, in that it's almost, a lot of companies never train people to do it. They have no fixed process for it. We just sort of think it's something that we can do. And I think everyone likes to think, well, it's just talking to people and asking questions about a job that I'm hiring for. Therefore, I must be good at it. And that's not necessarily the case.
That's actually the next thing on my list, is untrained interviewers.
Oh, really?
I remember having to prepare for a court case years ago. Mm-hmm. And the interviewer, one, was untrained, and two, she rewrote her interview notes, and that's what sealed the case.
Wow.
And it was this was 18 years ago, and it was a £13,000 out of court case settlement. Mm-hmm. And what the lawyer did was, she actually held up previous interview notes this woman had made, scribbles all over the place, etc. Again, just on her CV, no structure, which was another thing that they were like, how could you properly assess this woman? And then the second one was the notes that she had that looked like a diary entry, and she was why are they so different? I said, I rewrote my notes, and she was like, oh, so these aren't the notes that happened at the time, you rewrote them afterwards? And she was like, I would say the untrained interviewer of not understanding that you're taking part in something that could become a legal process, and how important that is. I think also bias. I don't know if it's happening in London now, but it definitely, people were talking about it in the London market before I left, was actually removing candidates' names to remove unconscious bias, whether it be with sex, race, and also age for me as well, because just because someone is younger doesn't mean to say that they couldn't do a job. And obviously the same goes for the other end of the spectrum, someone being older, making that assumption. I changed my career, and whenever I finally left Lloyd's, I was in my late 30s, and I decided that I thought, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. And if it all fails, then that's okay, because I will have learnt so much. And don't get me wrong, my ego would have taken a massive bashing.
Yeah.
They'd probably find me curled up in a corner somewhere. But I've decided to take another bold step and actually change my business model again and again, throwing a whole load of money at it. And let's see what happens. But I think I would rather look back and say I gave it a go than I didn't.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's a perfect segue to what you said at the start, which I didn't know what it was. But so you've come through exec coaching, and now you defined yourself more as an empowerment coach. So, and I know you've been working in schools. Is that related as well? Yeah. So it'd be good to hear about what an empowerment coach is.
So empowerment coaching is about empowering you to make the decisions that you need and want to make. I think, people get really wrapped up about titles, don't they? And you can call me the cleaner for all, and not that I'm downgrading cleaning, because I personally love it. But no, a joke. But you can call me whatever you want. But for me, empowerment is huge, because without it, we can't function in our jobs. You talk about people want to be empowered in their roles. They want to be empowered in their lives to make decisions about things and to be able to run with it. And for me, working with young adults, teenagers has been a huge piece of my change and journey, because if we can actually coach these kids from a younger age, the impact that it's going to have on corporate organisations is huge, and the benefit that is going to make. Like we were saying at the very beginning, if we'd have had a coach, whenever you're a graduate, whenever I was trying to decide what I was going to do, and which, by the way, what I studied isn't what I've now ended up doing.
No, of course not. Yeah,
it just goes to show, right? And an empowerment coach will get you to take that step back and really look at what are you doing, what do you need to do now, and what needs to happen to make the change happen and to get you to where your vision is, where your strategy needs to be, and where you ultimately want to end up. So for me, empowerment coaching is really about empowering you to be brave, do it, just go with it.
What is it? JF?
The JFTI.
JFTI.
I'm not sure I'll use that quite loosely with the kids.
Is that going to be on the website? Just fucking do it.com.
Yeah, I think I might get it somewhere on the website. But yes, I've started working with schools. I still work with corporates, and look, that was a huge thing for me to step away from. It's been a massive gamble, and I thought, again, but if I don't do it now, I'll always wonder what if.
Yeah.
And I'm really lucky that I've got a supportive husband, family, friends, and I've literally taken myself off the radar, taken myself off of all of social media, including LinkedIn.
I was trying to find you last night to do some last minute prep, and I was like, where has she gone? If you're not on LinkedIn, FJ, you don't exist anymore. This is what's happened.
It'll be back up by the end of the week. My branding specialist has basically warned me.
Good. Well, because that makes the end of the podcast difficult when I go, where can people catch up with you? Nowhere.
No, they can absolutely. They can email me, fj@clearviewwithfj.com. Or you can connect with me on LinkedIn, that's fine. And also Instagram page as well, Clearview with FJ. So the school stuff is going really well. I'm really a big believer that I start with age 15, right through until they finish university at 21. And, it goes up in level of complexity and challenge in terms of, from career coaching, interview training, internships. Social media, I abhor social media. I hate it. I think it has got a real negative impact on people. People really, judge themselves and they don't need to. They're good as they are, or as they want to be, and everyone's different for a reason. But also universities, 34% of universities look at kids' social media.
Really?
Them. 75% of companies check out your social media profile before.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, I'm definitely, it's not so much I'm guilty of, but the amount of times I might, be part of a process, and I'll have a client go, "Oh, we saw this online," and someone brought something up in an interview where they found out this guy unexpectedly was a DJ, because he was in his like 50s, and I don't know, I'm making massive stereotypical judgments there, but it was like quite surprising. He was like a house DJ. But then I think the CEO of Goldman's does that in Ibiza, but he's the CEO of Goldman's, he can do what he likes. But in an interview, and this candidate was really thrown by it in a really negative way. He just didn't like it. He was like, why are they looking on my personal social media? Why are they bringing up personal things about me? He found it really intrusive, and I really agreed with him. It is intrusive, but it's also the reality, right? And you've got to kind of balance the two.
Let me ask you this. You own your own company, you've owned your own agency as well, and if you had to hire someone that you then found out that they'd made some really horrendous comments about, and then your client's seen it, and because you've employed that person.
Oh, of course. Particularly in my profession, when you're trying to remove bias, like proactively trying to sort of help with D&I, and if you then go and find some comment, you've got to do due diligence and look at it. So that's the thing. There is, because it's a thing that's out there, it's a really difficult situation in terms of, you owe it to yourself as a business to look, particularly if they're going into a position of authority. But I do also see the other side of it, and that is it private or is it not? Or
I mean, it's such a grey area, and it's been a grey area in the law for quite some time now. But the way that I say to the kids is, if your mother or your grandmother would be ashamed of what you've written, take it down.
Those are most of the fun bits, aren't they?
My mother would be absolutely ashamed of me that I've sworn on this today.
I know. It's funny though, isn't it? Because I swear like a trooper, but you put a camera in front of me, I feel uncomfortable that we've sworn, but I'll beep it out. It's fine. We'll do it in the edit. Look, FJ, thank you so much. I'm going to put links to you in the below in the comments section, because by the time this goes out, I think your website or at least your LinkedIn will be back up. So thank you so much for spending some time with me. And if anyone wants to reach out to FJ to talk about exec coaching, empowerment, or anywhere in between, you can get her on the contacts below. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. Great to see you.
Bye.
Bye.